Hi guys, it's Dom here. This is a clip from a recent interview I did with wrestling legend Raven for Soundsphere magazine, which you can see now on the Soundsphere YouTube by going over to that channel. I'll put a link to that in the description and comments of this video. But yeah, this one sees Raven talk about his legacy and his the wrestling, the character of Raven, and how much of a role music played in that character, and lots of interesting kind of facets to such an iconic wrestling persona. So I hope you enjoy that, and thank you very much for watching this. Thank you for checking it out. We'll see you soon. Oh yeah. So I'm going to relate. My first question is around your character and sort of the impact of alternative music in the sort of 90s, early 2000s. Obviously, grunge was around. ECW seemed to me as a fan to be inspired by that. WCW as well. Your character, to me, there was a lot of, it catered for the alternative community. Yeah. And I wonder, like, was that intentional? Did you plan that, or was that just was it circumstantial of the time? It was a part of the time where you thought it was necessary to. I don't want to put words in your mouth here. It probably comes across like I am. Like, to what extent was the music a part of your character? Did you want to bring it in?
It's a huge part.
Okay.
Yeah, the way I came up with the character was I was sitting there talking to DDP one day, and he goes, and I was like, man, I was in WWF it was WWE at the time, I think, or I think they just became WWE, and they just had me as Johnny Polo, and then they took me off TV, which I never thought I was Johnny Polo anyway. That should have been Shane McMahon, you know what I mean? Because he's he's that character, Greenwich, Connecticut. My vocal pattern, I sound like a thug, you know what I mean? I don't sound like somebody upper class, rich guy. And so anyway, and then they took me off TV. I was doing the All-American and with Gorilla Monsoon, and I was also producing associate producer Monday Night Raw. And but then eventually Vince he said, there's a disconnect between you and the Johnny Polo. I don't get it. And I'm like, yeah, I don't get it either. It's not me. He goes, yeah, you're right. And he goes, we're going to just have you work behind the scenes. And I didn't get in this business to do this. And here I am, like, this is like 93. I was like 6 years in the business, and I'm already being shuttled into the producer role and being groomed to be a booker on the booking committee. And I was like, I got to do something else. I mean, I got to get back in the ring. I got to quit. And I was talking to DDP, and he said, I was saying, man, I go, I was bemoaning the fact that nobody hires chicken shit heels, because I loved playing a chicken shit heel, but nobody on the big stage was, that WWE and WCW weren't hiring that kind of character. He goes, you know what you should do? He goes, you wear a leather jacket, you wear Doc Martens, you wear ripped up jeans. You should just be. He goes, I saw this movie Point Break the other day, and you look like one of those Red Hot Chili Pepper dudes. You got tattoos. Yeah, I had long hair growing out. Like, this was when everybody was still wearing a mullet. I was growing my hair out. And he's like, you ought to be like the Red Hot Chili Pepper dudes. And I was like, and that pushed me in a direction where I was like, all right, let me think about this. And I decided I had to be a badass, because I didn't want to be a badass because everybody plays a badass. But I thought it was more interesting being a chicken shit, but they weren't hiring that. And I knew I had to change my character 180 degrees. And so I decided to go, commit to my look that I wore. Like, it was funny. Like, I'd wear what you consider Raven looking clothes. And Vince would make me wear a suit and tie. Like, he was trying to make me wear a suit and tie. And he had the HR lady helping me to try and, groom me to be, they had plans for me.
Right.
But I didn't want to be that, like, I could take my suit and tie off and I'd go right into Raven wear. And so I said, okay, so what can I wear to wrestling? And I go, let's see, ripped up jean shorts, need that. So I pulled them out of the closet, put them on, perfect. Yeah. Ripped up concert shirt, that's perfect. Sleeves cut off, show off my big arms at the time. I used to have big arms. And then I put I said, need some flannel because that's part of the zeitgeist, flannel, tied that around my waist, put wrestling sole on my Doc Martens.
Yeah.
And I have to say, my Doc Martens were the most uncomfortable shoes I've ever worn in my entire life. I know they're supposed to be the most comfortable, but the pair I bought was the most on my feet for whatever reason. I've never had a more uncomfortable shoe than the Doc Marten.
Yeah.
But I was too. I was like, I'm still wearing it. I don't care. And eventually I switched to high techs when my feet finally got so sick of wearing them. But and then I said a leather jacket, and then I thought, okay, I need to have variety, but I can't change a leather jacket. It's got to be like most people I tell, get a lot of ring jackets because you look like a star. More like Sting has so many ring jackets. He looks like a star because his wardrobe is so expansive. You know, same with Ric Flair. And I knew that's important, but I knew for my character that I had to stay with the leather jacket. So I went with the concert shirts, and I figured I'd just wear a different concert shirt every time. So that way I'm getting variety, but I'm also staying true to the character. Yeah. And then it was just a matter of just going through my closet and finding concert shirts. And then so I'm sitting there thinking, I go, I need a name. And I go, let me think. I go, I need a name for the character. I go, let's see. Okay, The Crow. The Crow was an interesting movie. I thought it captured part of the statement I was trying to make. You know, try to encapsulate all the misfits and all the people who didn't feel like they fit into society, and appeal to that group, and then turn on them. You know, but then be such a miserable fuck that even they didn't like me. You know what I mean? Yeah. But I feel Raven's like, he's a tortured soul, poetic soul. He's anyway, so and that was a lot of me, like a lot of like on the surface I'm very talkative and funny, but internally that's how I was very brooding on the inside, the crying on the inside clown. And so then I go, okay, so what was the character's name in The Crow? I go, what was it? It was
Draven.
Yeah, it was Eric Draven. Yeah, Draven. I go, Eric Draven, Raven, quote the Raven nevermore. Bang. Just like that. I put the costume together and came up with the name and the catchphrase all in under like 5 minutes. Like it was just inspiration, just boom, boom, boom. Nice. So then it was just a matter of tapping into the music, you know what I mean? Because that was part of the vibe, of the character. And music was so important, for the character. And so Come Out and Play just seemed like the perfect song because the lyrics fit, Also, what I loved about it was like, it had like the little intro, chicka, 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 chicka. And then it has the verbiage, you got to keep them separated. And then it kicks in hard, boom, 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 boom. Yeah. And so it's like the chicka, chicka, chick. You're like, oh, Raven's coming out. You think it is. And then you hear, got to keep them separated. You're like, yeah, it is Raven. And then the music kicks in, or boo, oh, that motherfucker, fuck him. Yeah. And the best compliments I ever had in my career were when people said, is he really that big of an asshole in real life? Like that's the best compliment ever, because it means that the people really believe that what you're doing, Absolutely. So anybody who like that's why people, I think, on the sidebar, why people never want to be heels. They always want to be baby faces that are cheered. I mean, they always want to be heels that are cheered because they're afraid to be baby faces that might be booed, if they don't get over enough. So they figure, so there's so many people that want to be that cheered heel, but that's just all you're doing is fucking your matchup and your I don't want to get off on a tangent because we're talking about music, but it's all good, yeah, man. But I was one of the few heels who legitimately loved being a heel. It just fit my personality. It fit my childhood. It fit my sensibilities. Like being cheered felt disingenuous almost. You know what I mean? Yeah. Because it was until I went to psychology, I sat on a psychologist's couch for a couple of years and worked through my issues. It felt disingenuous. It felt like, I don't deserve their praise, so I didn't want it anyway, but anyway, so music wise, so I just wore concert shirts and music of bands I loved, you know what I mean? And then music was such a big part of it, and music was such a big part of ECW, the revolution, like, and they go hand in hand too. They were the first company to start using real music again. Like, because for years nobody used real music because they didn't want to pay the copyright fees. So they made in-house, and then plus making in-house music like WWE did, they would get all the royalty rights to it. So it made more sense.
Yeah, and then you had the offspring, and it became synonymous with your character. And I think that there's a real strength to that. We'll talk about legacy and your attitude to it in a minute. But like, do you feel like everything you wanted that character to be, again, as a fan, it feels like you created something that transcends time. People compare you. People, your name comes up against, X, Y, and Z character, your Sammy Callahan's or your Bray Wyatt's or whatever. It feels like to me as a fan, your character transcended that time. Do you feel like it did everything you wanted it to do? Was it everything that you wanted it to be?
It would have been if I would have made it to the top of WWE, but that was WWE. I had heat with McMahon, long story. And so I never really got what I felt was the push I deserved in that company. And so no, I didn't get to do everything I wanted, but what I did do, I felt the work I did in ECW will stand up against anybody's work, anytime, anywhere, ever. Whether it's work rate, whether it's psychology, whether it's matches, whether it's storyline especially, plot-driven, episodic television. Because that's what I got into wrestling for, was episodic, storytelling. I like seeing. That's why I loved living in Florida, because Florida Championship Wrestling, something would happen every week that would propel the storyline further and further. Whereas in WWE, they rarely did that. They rarely had any competitive, when I was a kid, they rarely had competitive matches. It was all squash matches. Your listeners probably know what that is. When they had a jobber come out and get beat up and just to put the name over. And then you had to go to the arena to see you had to pay to go to the arena to see the name versus another name, because they never fought each other, and then when Nitro and Raw came along, they had they started doing away with squash matches and had all competitive matches, or relatively competitive. And that's been the norm for ever since. But for the longest time, it wasn't.
Yeah. It's interesting though. I kind of want to challenge you a bit there, because I feel like, and again, this is, it may sound like I'm blowing smoke up your ass here, Raven, but
I love smoke up my ass. Love the smoke in the ass.
Let's look at it this way, right? So if you look at, you made the best of what you had from my mind as a kid watching it. You made the best of what you had in WWE. You were at the top of TNA and Impact, ECW as well, and the character, again, in terms of longevity, in terms of a character that people. I know wrestlers in the UK, and I know wrestlers in the US as people I've spoken to, but also as a fan that watch back on your promos and stuff. I feel like that's pretty, we are going to talk about success, and I don't want to lead too much into that, but like, I feel that's pretty cool, man. Like, if you look at, you didn't, get a WWE championship, but you had, you made the best of what you had there. I feel like that's pretty cool, like, personally.
No. I mean, I had to spend time on a psychologist's couch to be happy to accept the fact that my career was incredibly successful. But I felt like it wasn't a success because I didn't get the WWF title. You know what I mean? Like, because I wasn't used on. I didn't need the title, but being used on top in WWE. But if anybody else would have came to me and said, I've had this career, and it was the same career that I had, I would have said, man, that's so stupid. Why are you not, satisfied? You should be more than satisfied. And, but I held myself to a higher standard, to a much higher standard than I held everybody else. And I felt like, even though when I got into business, I thought, if I tried and I'm not successful, I won't be a failure because I tried. That's all that matters, is to try. To me, that's all that matters. But then I hold myself to a different standard, which after spending time on a psychologist's couch, I learned not to hold myself to a different standard, because it's just arrogant, to be honest. It's just pretentious and arrogant to hold yourself to a higher standard, but it's easy to fall into that trap, though. It's just hard to get out of it.
Yeah, 100%. I can relate to that, and it's difficult when you achieve stuff and you're obviously in the limelight, to the level you were. I guess you do find yourself competing with people, or rather definitions of success, which I'll bring that one in now, actually, because it seems like the right time to bring it in. A lot of young people I work with as part of my day job, they look at characters like you on television, or you have your successful podcast, etc., and they go, oh, I'm never gonna, these are conversations I have had with people, I'm never gonna be like that, I'm never gonna be in
but that's okay. Yeah, but that's okay.
Yeah. So what is your attitude to success, and how has that changed?
To me, that's okay if you're never going to be me or somebody else. I had to deal with that myself, because I wasn't, like I just said, I wasn't up here. I was up here for the number 3 promotion. I was here for the number 2 promotion. And then I was here for the number 1 promotion, and I felt I should have been up here for all 3 of them, and then TNA, I was up there again. So I'm grateful that TNA was even formed for this, not just because it's great for another place for everybody to work, but it gave me an opportunity to not end my career in WWE, which I didn't want to end, my career that way. I wanted to, be used better, and I was. But for people that say I'll never be that, you don't have to be that. Nobody has to be that. You have to be the best you. Be the best person that you can be. And like, I'm limited. If I was 4 inches taller, and I would have been 30 pounds heavier at the time, because I was considered one of the smallest guys in the business at 220 pounds. Yeah. And that's not nowadays. I'd be a big guy. You know what I mean? I'm 240, 241. I'd be considered a good sized guy now, but back then I was considered too small. You know what I mean? And so I had limitations built in, but the fact is you can only go, you can only go as far as your limitations will allow you, or as other, and then also you have to think about this, it's not just, you, there's also circumstances, like just because I felt like and a lot of people felt like I should have been used better in WWE. I part of it was I got heat with the office, and that was half of that was my own fault. So I have to blame myself for that, and I got to take responsibility for that. And half of it was they didn't like me. And so because they didn't like me, they didn't want to use me that way. Yeah. Part of the reason they didn't like me was my own fault. Part of it was just them not liking me and not liking the character. And because of that, you're limited again. You know what I mean? So there's always, you can't always get what you want, but sometimes you find what you need, Yeah. To quote the Stones, and that's always been like, I haven't always got what I wanted, but I always got what I needed. And that's how you should look at life. You want to be content. You don't need, it's like buying the statues, you don't need to have 8 million statues, have a couple favorites, you know what I mean? And don't waste your money on, crap, because ultimately money can be much better well spent. And to be honest, it's like people that I still find it amazing that people buy autographs. Like they buy autographs, and then what do? They go home, they put it in a drawer, and they stick it there, and then it sits in a drawer for 100 years, and then they show a friend or two, hey, look what I got, But really, it's just, it's kind of, I hate to say it, but it's kind of a waste of money. You know what I mean? It's like, especially when. So all I'm saying is be more prudent. Don't be like me. Don't be just waste your money on extravagances. Don't. I don't know why I'm getting off on a tangent on this. I guess as I get older, I'm grateful that I have money. That I'm very well off. But it could have just as easily been the other way, that I wasn't well off. You know what I mean? And then I would be like, man, I wish I wouldn't have pissed away all that money. You know what I mean? And I didn't even piss away a lot. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Well, I did piss away a lot, but I wouldn't call it pissing away. I spent it on stuff that I enjoyed, but I forget. What was the question?
No, we talk about success and definitions of success.
Oh yeah, success. Yeah. So your success is what you make of yourself, you know. And there's always going to be, you're going to be limited by society. You're going to be limited by your own abilities, and you're going to be limited by situations. But if you go out and do the best you can do and be the best you can be, that's all anybody asks for. You know, that's what you can be proud of. Is, I've always said that I would rather have on my team, like if I was picking a team, you know, like if we had, you know, like, you know, sports and like, you know, some kind of soccer game or a football game, and I picked a team and you picked a team, I would pick the guy who tries harder than the guy who's just flashy and the guy who's great with a bad attitude. I would rather have somebody who cares enough to try, and, you know, even if they're not as good. It's like that. That's why I like that Ted Lasso show.
I've not seen it, but I want to check it out.
Yeah, it's tremendous. Yeah.
The term legacy comes into this quite a lot with certain musicians and artists of different statures, and I look at what you were able to achieve again in terms of, you know, your championships and your you know, the fact you are still mentioned next to, you know, your X, Y, and Z stars of today, whatever. And I think that's pretty cool. But that's me putting, again, you know, me putting my opinion on. Well,
I consider myself. I consider myself in a much higher place than maybe than I've been. Like I think I think it's pretty well known that I could have been used better, and I think. But the bottom line is I'm happy with what I've done because I did everything I could, short of blowing somebody, I guess. I did everything I could to, you know, to be the best I could be. You know, I mean, I made some mistakes, but everybody makes mistakes. You know, so, you know, I'm happy. I'm content. You know, I mean, I'm cool with my legacy, and I think it gets stronger as the years go by. Yeah, I don't think it gets weaker.
Yeah. I agree personally, but again, people have different attitudes to it, and I guess, you know, the question is, do you think about it? Do you think about the legacy of the Raven character, or does it just, are you content to let it take its own? You know,
I'm more than content to let it take its own course. I don't watch wrestling anymore.
Right.
For a couple of reasons. One is I'm a completist, which is why my 30,000 comics, because I had to read everything. Yeah. And which is why I had to stop. A little OCD behavior. But I'm a completist, so I'd have to watch every show. You know what I mean? If I watch wrestling, and I don't have the time or the inclination because I have too many other interests. The other thing is it breaks my heart because I never got to be the top guy in the top promotion. So when if I watch AEW or watch WWE, all it does is make me misty-eyed, I would say.
Right.
A little saddened that I didn't get to do what I felt like I could do. Like I never felt like I had the best match I could have. You know, like I've had some matches I consider classics, but I've never been in a position to have the match that my ability would allow me to have. I never had my best match. Let's just put it that way. You know, but I don't think about it because it's not part of my life anymore. You know, it's like now I do indie shows. Well, you know, not with the surgeries, but you know, when I'm done with them, I'll go back to doing indie shows again. And but you know, I'm content. I mean, I look at it. I try not to live in the past. I try to live in the current, in the now, and that's why I don't do a lot of stuff because I just don't have the interest. Long story short is I'm content with my legacy. I wish I'd done a little bit more, but I'm more than happy with what I've done. Yeah. And I don't have any regrets. I know I'm sorry. I have a lot of regrets. I got a ton of regrets, but that's okay. It's okay to have regrets because we make mistakes, you know? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Absolutely. And I guess, again, going from that, you know, and talking about, you know, the career that you were able to have, you know, away from wrestling, I know, you know, because obviously you changed a lot from Johnny Polo to Raven over your career. What about personally? What did you learn? Like, what were the biggest things you learned from the beginning of your career? How did you change and develop as a person from that time when you started out to where you are now?
I think everything I mentioned about the time I spent on a psychologist's couch, learning to be okay with what I've done, learning to accept my limitations, my faults, you know, stop, because see, I was really egotistical most of my career because I was insecure, because that's what breeds, that's why anybody's egotistical, is because they're insecure. They don't feel like they're qualified. And even though I knew I was athletically, I still felt like I wasn't. And so I would try and brag to everyone. I didn't know this consciously. This is all subconscious. And I found out later when I was, you know, from the psychologist. But yeah, so I was egotistical because I would hope that by convincing you that I'm great, you would convince me that I'm great.
Right.
That was the whole psychology that I was unaware of, but that's what I was doing. So, you know, subconsciously, I was bragging to make sure you would think I was great, but all that does is make you annoyed or irritated and pisses you off. Whereas, and it's like, as much as I wanted to have friends, I went and did everything in my power to avoid making them, because then I couldn't be disliked. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Which ended up making me disliked anyway. You know, so it's like you learn. Hopefully life's, you know, it's a journey. Hopefully you learn along the way a bunch of lessons that pay off, and you can be content in your older age. And I'm very close to being completely content. You know, I'm not 100% content. I'm like 75%. But that I think is the real goal. You know, is success should be measured in contentment.
Yeah.
You know,
that's an interesting way. I've never heard that as succinctly as that, actually.